Welcome to Daily Dose of Greek, Weekend Edition. Today we're going to be talking about the lexicography of the Septuagint. There's a lot to get through, so we're going to jump right in. We use lexicons quite a bit in biblical studies, but we don't often think about lexicography itself. Well, there are two aspects of lexicography. Practical lexicography, the task of compiling a physical volume such as this. There's also theoretical lexicography, and this is the academic methodology that lies behind creating a lexicon. How to organize the information, how to provide definitions or glosses. Today, we're going to be focusing mostly on theoretical lexicography. Now, we also have to think about what we mean when we say Septuagint. You probably have a copy of Rolf's like this sitting on a shelf somewhere, but the Septuagint is better thought of as an anthology of ancient Greek translations of the Hebrew Bible, undertaken by an unknown number of unknown Jews in an unknown number of locations over an unknown period of time somewhere between the 3rd century BCE and the 2nd century CE. And this is important because the Septuagint is not a monolithic thing, but it's a diverse thing. And this is part of what makes Septuagint lexicography so interesting and even contested. Another reason that Septuagint lexicography is interesting is because of these two fellows of Queen's College, Oxford, Bernard Grenfell and Arthur Hunt. In 1897, these two set off to start digging 100 miles south of Cairo in a place called Oxyrhynchus, which of course means City of the Sharp-Nosed Fish. Well, 10 years later, they had dug up over 500,000 manuscripts. These were papyri written in non-literary Greek, Greek of the street, vernacular Greek. We know that this is important for biblical studies thanks to really intelligent people like this man, Adolf Deismann. Deismann got his hands on some of these papyri, started reading them, and quickly realized that this was the same sort of Greek we have in our New Testament and in our Septuagint. And so he was one of the first of several scholars to start to dispel with the notion of Holy Ghost Greek, or the idea of a Jewish Greek dialect, two concepts that were prominent within Greek scholarship all the way through the 20th century. Now, skipping past 100 years of Greek scholarship, we're only just getting two lexicons for the Septuagint. On the left, the lexicon written by Lust, Einikel, and Hospi, and on the right, the lexicon written by Takamitsu Muraoka. These two lexicons have different theoretical approaches to lexicography. First of all, Muraoka understands the Septuagint as a document of Hellenistic Judaism, that is, an independent product of its specifically Greek environment. What this means is that it's a corpus of Hellenistic Koine Greek, the same kind of Greek found in Grenfell and Hunt's papyri, standard, vernacular, and non-literary. For Muraoka's methodology, this means that word meaning is discovered in context, just like an ancient Greek-speaking Jew in Egypt would have understood it, sitting down to read the Septuagint without any knowledge or reference of the Hebrew original. Now, there are a lot of words that occur in the Septuagint that don't appear in many other sources, despite all the papyri that we found. When this occurs, Muraoka will consult daughter versions, that is, translations that were made from the Septuagint translation. He'll also sometimes consult patristic commentaries. The idea in Muraoka is to understand the Greek of the Septuagint as an ancient Greek. Turning now to the lexicon by Lust, Einikel, and Hospi, otherwise known as LEH, they see the Septuagint as a translation of the Jewish scriptures, that is, as a dependent literary product of its specifically Jewish environment. What this means is that they understand it as a corpus of translation Greek. While the editors on the one hand don't view the Septuagint as some sort of Jewish Greek dialect, they don't see it as a natural Koine either. Rather, they recognize the influence of the Hebrew, particularly at the level of syntax, but also at the level of word meaning. This means that word meaning is qualified by the meaning of the Hebrew original. The editors will point to two things as illustrations. First of all, transliterations. For example, the Hebrew word ephod is transliterated in Greek as ephod, which in English we transliterate too with ephod. Secondly, they point to semantic shifts, such as the word eirini, which in the Septuagint is used to mean welfare or status, like in Hebrew, whereas in Greek it never means that, but only the absence of conflict, harmony, or peace. In LEH, the focus is on understanding the Greek of the Septuagint through the meaning of the Hebrew. Now, to draw some points of contrast, first, there's a difference in how to determine the meaning of a Greek word in a translated text like the Septuagint. On the one hand, Muraoka construes the Greek as Greek in its Greek context, while on the other hand, LEH construes the Greek through the Hebrew in its Hebrew context. Secondly, there's a difference in how to provide the meaning of a word. This is a practical matter. On the one hand, Muraoka provides definitions, which are descriptions of word meaning, while LEH provides glosses, which are translation equivalents. And now for an example. In Hosea 13:8a, we read, Efgeshem kadov shachul. Pagash, and a cow, means to meet or encounter. Kadov, like a bear, and shachul, deprived or bereaved, specifically of children. Now the Septuagint translates this with apontisome aftis os archos aporumeni, the word of interest here being aporeo. Now aporeo does not mean deprived of children like the Hebrew word does. Rather, as we see in Muraoka's lexicon, it means to be left wanting. And he translates this verse with a famished bear, meaning wanting food. So we can see how, according to Muraoka, the Greek and the Hebrew words here differ in meaning. Now, in LEH, we find the same verse treated here specifically, and they translate it like a bear that is desperate or at a loss. And here we can see the sense of the underlying Hebrew word gets favored, namely the idea of being deprived. So I hope this is a helpful illustration of how LEH and Muraoka have different theoretical methodologies. Now there's loads more we could say, but we've gone on long enough, and if you're interested, I encourage you to do your own reading.